Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your sun in Pisces and Scorpio rising. And these two signs are harmonious because they're both water, so they form a trine. And what this means is that they will be very cooperative in terms of what each one is trying to accomplish when they come together. So for the sun and the rising sign, really promoting your life in general or your career or what you want to, what your dreams are all about comes more easily to you than it does to other people because there's a harmonizing effect here, and it means that you're more likely to dress and carry yourself in a way that's alignment with who you really are. And so people get this sense that, they can trust you, that you are who you claim to be. Although I will say that with Scorpio at the ascendant, you may be very inscrutable, like hard to figure out. So sometimes people do tend to get a little uneasy when they're around somebody that they just can't really feel like that person, like if they feel that person's closed off, then they may get a little bit leery about that. And so, but you have a tendency to do that because that is kind of like, to me, the rising sign is the defense mechanism. So something maybe from your past has made you believe or taught you that when you are too open, you're vulnerable and therefore you're at risk. So you try to, like if you're in a new situation, you may just sit back and take in everything around you and kind of formulate your inner opinions and analysis of what's going on, or sense, maybe it's more of an intuitive thing, but you might not necessarily be forthcoming about yourself. Like, let's say it's some kind of a group dynamic where they're asking everybody to say something about themselves in a circle. You may give the bare information that is required. So you might have this wariness about yourself, getting, coming into contact with new people and new situations. But Pisces as the sun will, I feel, make you trust. Pisces is associated, I always think of in the tarot, the Page of Cups, which is, a child's energy, the energy of a child, which is very open and trusting. So it's quite different in that sense. Even though they form a trine, they have a lot of differences, these two water signs, in how they operate, how they do things. And sometimes Pisces people, I think, get played for a fool because Pisces does have a tendency to believe the wrong people and get themselves in, a mess sometimes because of that. But I don't feel that a lot of Pisces people are really fools. I think they are choosing to do what they do, knowing deep inside exactly what they're doing, but they just can't help themselves. They're so idealistic, or you are so idealistic, that you see the best in everyone. However, the reason I said they was because I was talking about Pisces in general. I don't think that this combination is necessarily going to be totally like that, because you are a person who is coming from very likely experiencing some stuff in life. Scorpio and Pisces in particular, I think, probably went through some difficult situations in the past. But Scorpio ain't going to be the same fool twice, and when I say fool, Scorpio is never a fool, because Scorpio is you know, able to bore their eyes into someone and just totally expose them just by looking at them. So because you have this on the ascendant, you may have even piercing eyes, a very sharp facial features that like a hawk or like an eagle, because I think Scorpio, one of the symbols is an eagle. And if you look at a bald, I mean, in America we have bald eagles, right? And although I don't know if I've ever actually seen one in the flesh, because they were supposed to be extinct, but now they've come back. And there are certain birds and they have very like sharp features. Even an owl is kind of like that, where their eyes are very piercing. And that's what a Scorpio is like. So if you have it on the ascendant, that's especially going to be true in terms of appearance. And that makes other people nervous because some people are being phony and, being artificial, and they don't like people exposing that about themselves. And some people just feel very, maybe there are some people who are not being straight. Oh no, well, I wasn't going to say, because that is being phony, or being like kind of a con artist. But there are also some people who are hiding some things about themselves, and those people may feel like you're silently, exposing it. They might feel like you can read their mind or read their thought. That's the same thing. Read their thoughts. And, speaking of which, this combination is very psychic, so it might not be too far from accurate to say that. So you're the type of person who is very intuitive, and this can naturally make you gravitate towards healing arts professions, but you just in general, you tend to feel very deeply for everyone. And it's interesting because I was going to say that this type of Pisces person might not fall for a con artist or something like that. Look to the moon sign as well, just to get a feel for things, because I feel that some of you may still have a tendency to convince yourself of things that are not true simply because you are wanting a certain type of assurance that everything's going to be okay, when it really is not if you continue doing what you're doing. So in other words, you put yourself into situations that maybe there might be some self-destructive tendencies within yourself, because Scorpio rules the 8th house of transformation. And one of the, that saying about the cat having 9 lives, you could say that about a Scorpio in a sense, that they tend to, maybe they go through different phases where they're different in how they express themselves, or act, or what it is they're doing for a living, or they're whatever. And this isn't like some kind of fickle quality, because Scorpio is actually a fixed sign. It's a sign that they are willing to delve into other possibilities. What we call some of this self-growth. And by the way, Sagittarius is the next sign over, and Sagittarius is about expansion or growth. So sometimes it's possible that the Scorpio individual mimics the Sag, but it's a different type of thing. It's not just like positive thinking, it's about deep inner work. Shadow work is associated with the eighth house. So, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that I don't believe that Scorpio as a sign is prone to self delusion the way that Pisces is. But remember that this is the rising sign, so it's not going to embody all of those extensive characteristics of the sign itself. It can be, to me, more of a defense mechanism, a protective device. So, for instance, if a Pisces person with Scorpio rising has been through trauma, their Scorpio rising can be that they have this very strong, forbidding aura or presence about them that keeps people on their toes, that makes people less likely to mess with them. And it's kind of putting on this armor of sorts so that other people know better than to mess with you. But it doesn't mean that you're not vulnerable. It doesn't mean that you might not have some of those qualities. And certainly, I do think that some Scorpio, even like a Scorpio sun sign, could get involved in relationships that are abusive as adults, where they are the ones that are in that kind of dependency, and they're the ones that are being abused or controlled or what have you. You know, we always hear about the Scorpio who is the stalker, the obsessive one, the controlling person, but it can go both ways. Why does it happen like that? Well, again, you know, when people have been through trauma, it makes it hard for them to understand boundaries and be able to assert themselves, because they like they can identify as the victim. Here we are talking about Scorpio as a rising sign, and I do not see Scorpio as a sign as having the victim mentality as much as Pisces. Pisces is the martyr. I mean, that's part of its characteristics. So feeling like a victim can definitely occur. But with Scorpio, what is happening is that the person, I think it's more like a suspicion of other people and what they are capable of. And the reason that this can be problematic is that the person can really go through the world with this paranoia, this feeling that people are not trustworthy. And even if that's, proven true in some cases, it can make the person pretty cynical. Or there's another word that I'm looking for that I can't think of right now. But that's kind of like being cynical. And it's a lower vibration to be like that. It's one thing to be aware of what's going on, but to be kind of like, it's not necessarily pessimistic, although it comes out in a rather negative, like having negative expectations about what people are going to do. That kind of thing is unfortunate because to me, it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy sometimes, where a person is expecting somebody to be a certain way and then they prove them right and then they go, see, I told you so. Even though that's not true. That person was not really doing that for that reason. So being able to balance trust and appropriate wariness is important. But I do believe that can come over time, but there might be some people with this combination who have to go through a few negative situations before they realize that they have to, like for instance, the Pisces energy, they have to be able to discern properly. They have to be able to set appropriate boundaries. I think that's another thing. Like Scorpio tends to me would have rigid boundaries and very high boundaries. Scorpio to me as a whole is an extreme sign. So doing something in half measure is probably pretty impossible for the average Scorpio because they're just so extreme. Again, this is the rising sign, so it might be a bit less of an influence. But the problem with Pisces is it tends to not have any boundaries. Neptune is a planet that dissolves. It doesn't, set boundaries like Saturn does, the ruler of Capricorn, the co-ruler of Aquarius. So you may have to learn how to do that, and then through that structure, you're able to weed out people who are not making the grade, so to speak. And really, I don't know if this is true. This is just my feeling that a lot of people with Scorpio, and possibly even, I mean, not Scorpio Pisces, but even possibly Scorpio, that they may come from a background where addiction was something that they were exposed to. But especially Pisces, because Neptune is a ruler, and Neptune rules drugs. But drugs can include alcohol for sure. So I've seen this, I've observed this quite a bit, where adult children of alcoholics, they can end up becoming like their parents because they didn't learn how to manage stress. So they just saw their parents always, chug-a-lugging whenever they were having problems. So then they follow and do it too. But sometimes what happens, and this is where it gets convoluted, is that they shun their parents' drug of choice and they decide to do something else. And then they feel like they're not like their parents and therefore they don't have a problem. I see this a lot with pot versus alcohol. The parents are alcoholics. The adult child is a pothead, but they defend it because they say, well, alcohol causes all this and that, but they're like fine because they're just smoking pot. And they may have some very astute points concerning the dangers of both substances, but it's not just about physical danger that results, of course, driving a car is not a good, thing, but also how does it impact relationships? How does it impact their spiritual growth, their emotional growth, their ability, when you have to be stone cold sober and you're dealing with a serious issue that is really freaking you out, but you're not reaching for a joint or a, glass of alcohol. That is a very good thing because your coping skills are strengthening. So the reason I say this is that Pisces people, I think they normalize addiction. And if they see it in a person that they are getting involved with, they may not feel that there's anything that big of a deal. Yeah, come to think of it, I was friends with someone who is a triple Scorpio. And we were out just hanging out. And I think this individual liked my friend and lit up a joint when we were in the street. Now, this was over 30 years ago. And I can't remember if I inhaled on that occasion. But I remember thinking, oh, okay, because that happened, but it wasn't something that happened every day. You wouldn't see that every day like you do now that it's legal where I live, But the point that I'm trying to make is that I think that this was somebody that she was interested in, And I said to her, yeah, I don't think he passed the joint around. And I think I said to her afterwards, oh yeah, did you notice? Oh yeah, and he lit up a joint. And she goes, really? I didn't notice. And I'm like, oh. So it might, like, something that really jumped out at me wasn't even on her radar. So yeah, and she was a Scorpio, or she is a Scorpio. So that kind of thing too, where people don't even, I mean, this happens all the time. When you're meeting new people that could be potential partners, you may be blinded to red flags a go-go that are happening, that they're doing. And it's like, that's, to me, it's kind of disconcerting when I deal with someone who has a Pisces, has, personal planets in Pisces, could be the moon or the sun or something like that, and they were totally oblivious to something that to me is a very serious thing, because it's almost to me like they're filtering that out on a subconscious or unconscious level, that they're not, like, there's something that is being filtered out that is a very important piece of information for them to ponder about that person's behavior. It's like if you were, they say, if people are in a restaurant and they treat the server badly, that's a real red flag, of how their true character is. And that's kind of like a no-brainer in a sense. If somebody is consistently disrespectful to people who are taking care of them in some way, that shows a disdain for people, that they might even consider them less than or what have you. How many people would that not register with when they were out with them? And they may just like ignore that, and I'm not even saying consciously ignore it. It wouldn't even come up for them, and then continue down that path, and then be shocked when it happens to them, when they're the one that is disrespected. So, yeah, so please pay attention to what is happening. Usually, I feel like usually that Scorpio rising will be a strong enough influence that the person will be able to see through that individual. But I could see the Pisces sun making excuses. Well, yeah, he is or she is very controlling, but they had a childhood that was very traumatic. This happened, that happened, the whole sob story. And I'm not trying to make light of abuse in the past, but it doesn't justify continuing that cycle. So, relationships can be dangerous if you're not discerning, meaning that you may get involved with, when I say dangerous, I don't mean like life or death, although, obviously we see the news and what happens, but I'm saying dangerous in that if you choose somebody that seems familiar to you, that has the same negative behavioral patterns, it could re-trigger some old trauma in you, and you don't want that. So being able to not trauma bond with a person either. Sometimes people who have, I think of like Sid and Nancy, maybe that's an extreme example. And I'm not talking about astrology here, but just talking about how they were attracted to one another. These two, Sid Vicious and Nancy Spungen or something. I don't know how you say her name, but I did her astrological chart. It's on my channel. But yeah, these two people that were misfits who came together, and they had this tragic bond. Some people romanticize things like that and say, wow, they were soulmates. And you may romanticize getting together with somebody, if you feel broken and you get together with somebody else and you identify that in each other, it may feel healing in the sense that there's somebody else in this world like you, but it can be problematic because you may have some of the same weaknesses, and that makes it easy for you to pull each other down further. So if, like, let's say somebody has a problem with addictive tendencies and they get together with somebody else who's the same way, maybe they were both in rehab when they got together, and they end up egging one another on, into that kind of self-indulgence because they both had that same vulnerability. So it makes it harder for one person to be the strong one in certain situations and vice versa. So there can be, that's what I feel like, is that the past and things that have happened can be like these ghosts that can really hover over you and make everything, like the type of job, like if you're on a job and the boss reminds you of one of your parents who was never satisfied with your work, that can affect your ability to stay in a job, to thrive. So it's very important because, emotions, these are both water signs. So in life in general, you're going to have to find some way to be able to become less subjective, where everything that happens to you is filtered through this system of like, oh yeah, I remember when this happened to me when I was a child, because it can lead to feelings of never escaping the past. And so it might mean that you have a lot of healing to do. If you find that it's hard to kind of move forward, if you find that there's something kind of keeping you back, holding you back, but you are a powerful healer in your own right. So if that's something that appeals to you, if you really want to help people, try to become as healthy, emotionally healthy as you can be, so that you can properly help other people. Because, like, if you might be the biggest, baddest psychic in the world, but if you are allowing your personal beliefs or experiences to seep into your psychic insight, it could be subjective and it might not be helpful to that individual who is different from you. So, we always want to be as objective as possible when we're dealing with other people, if we have clients, rather than just assuming that our own experiences are what everybody else is experiencing, which is not true. There's a tendency to be prejudiced when somebody is a water sign. When I say that word, everybody's going to automatically think I'm talking about being racist. That's a form of prejudice, but that's only one type. You could be sexist. Well, I think the sexism apply. Usually they accuse men of being sexist towards women, but women can be against their own gender. They might have like animosity towards their own gender. You can have people of the same race prejudiced against their own people, and they would rather be around people of different races. It happens. And I'm not just saying black on black or white on white. It happens in every group, is that they don't like their group. Who knows? Maybe it's karmic. I don't know. But whatever it is, the point is that it's not accurate because you're overgeneralizing. But this is what subjectivity does. People have experiences and they formulate opinions based on those experiences. It makes a lot of sense, but it's narrow-minded because it's not taking into account that every human being on this planet is different. We can never truly generalize. a group because it's, there's always outliers. Even if 95% seem to conform to one pattern, there are still outliers. But anyway, it's important, it's important to be very objective when you're dealing with other people. And you have to protect your energy. I mean, some people say, oh, you don't have to protect your energy. Hey, I don't know if I have to, I don't do anything to protect my energy, but I'm not somebody that calls myself psychic. I don't go around, I don't have any water in my personal points, but you do. So you are an empath on steroids. So you might find that you're easily drained, that it's hard for you to deal with certain situations because of the energy that you're exposed to. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to what drains you and what enlivens you, what seems to build you up and what feels very draining to you. Pisces has a tendency to attract a narcissist, but I'd say water signs in general and empaths even more general attract narcissists because they are energy vampires and they're looking for somebody to feed off of. And people who have porous boundaries, who don't say no, who are afraid to say no, or who don't even know that they're supposed to say no, can be their chosen targets. So learning how to be assertive, not aggressive, is very important for this combination. Learning to trust those people who have earned your trust, but not putting people through the paces. The Scorpio energy is about testing people. This combination can be very afraid of abandonment, of being cheated on and things like that. Although this, like I said before, the Scorpio is in the rising sign position. So some of those other things that we would associate with the sun or moon may not be applicable for this type of configuration. And Pisces people, I could see a Pisces person allowing their partner to cheat because they feel like they would rather them cheat than to just leave them. And I actually, someone online was talking about a famous person or somebody who got involved like that, and they were allowing their partner to cheat, and they were like judging that person, like how could they do that? That's, like they're so pathetic to allow that person to cheat and stuff like that, because people are very judgmental. They don't understand why people do things like this. It's coming from sometimes it's coming from low self-esteem. But I think with Pisces, there is this desire to make that person happy, whatever it takes, by any means necessary, even if you are left hanging out to dry. So you have to learn how to honor yourself the way you honor other people, Pisces. The Scorpio part of yourself is really trying to be a badass, trying to come across like you're a tough guy, but really you are a pushover and you know it. And I do think that it's helpful to have Scorpio rising because it can weed out certain people who might be more abusive, but maybe in a very overt way. But you know something? You might meet your match with a person who is very scorpionic themselves, and then they outplay you. They get your number before you're able to really get theirs. And so it can be kind of this power struggle, this ninth dimensional chess game. In terms of, but I think you're a deeply loving person. Just choose wisely. With in terms of your career possibilities, I've already talked about healing. I think anything, art for sure, any kind. You may love music. You may love. For some reason I said dancing. I don't know why, but being an actress or actor, being it could be a painter, anything like that. Anything creative or healing is your jam. But of course, people do other things as well. I'm just saying what I think is the most likely. Anything that Scorpio is a prominent position, I could think of a therapist as well. Okay, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a personal reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.